You've said that the future of government is government. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it is a good question, and it's really something I've been grappling with a fair bit. I'll give a quick analogy. I read an interesting piece recently about the future of retail.
Yes.
I follow this digital debate all over the place. And I read this piece and I thought, yeah, I suppose at one level, when you look at it, the future of retail is probably digital in one level. But actually it seems to me the future of retail is retail. Now, digital will come along and it will disrupt and it will come up with some astonishing stuff that we've never even thought about. And, you know, I'm sure if I was a retailer, I'd think to myself, yeah, my whole future is going to be determined to some extent. And that's partly true. But actually, the future of retail is what it is we think retail will become in the next 10 or 20 years. It's exactly the same in government, I think. I think people who work in government get very frustrated when people from the digital end of the conversation come and tell them that the future of their business is this digital business that people in government don't understand. And I think that's a really risky way of putting it. The future of government is government, what we want government to do in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Doing good government well is the game. Now, the digital question is, what do we as digital evangelists, innovators, entrepreneurs, brilliant thinkers, whatever we think we are, and I'm definitely one of them, I'm a deep believer in this conversation. What is it we bring to that task of doing good government well? That's the game. And the future of doing that is the future of doing that. What do we bring to that conversation? If we start there, I suspect as digital change makers, shape shifters, if you like, we'll get a much better hearing from people who will immediately hear that we understand that the future of their business is their business. Our job is to help that future emerge much more effectively, much more powerfully, and much more impactfully than it might otherwise do. And that's what I'm suggesting we have to say to ourselves. The future of government is not digital. The future of government is government. Digital brings something quite profound to that equation. That's kind of where I think we've got to play in the future.
So in talking about the future of government is government, there must be a great deal of complexity under that statement. What are some of the points of complexity?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because I did think about that a bit before we had this conversation. And I kind of reflected on my own experience, having spent on and off the last 30 years either working inside government or with government officials and politicians, and then obviously reflecting over the last little period. So if I can just quickly refer to the kind of quick thoughts I'd put down. So these would be what I would put on the table. A focus on making policy better, designing services with impact and equity, using evidence more systematically to inform practice and outcomes, attracting and retaining requisite talent, conceiving and protecting what the public interest is or the common good. This is a very, very complicated business in government, and it's core, it seems to me, to what we want governments to do. This idea of kind of voting for the future, thinking long term, that's another thing they need to do. How do we work with crowds of experts, people with real insight that we need to corral? How do we fight big issues around things like inequality? I think Sue's just rescuing issues like trust and legitimacy. I mean, I think we're seeing around the world at the moment, my goodness, you know, we live in the age, as somebody read recently in the paper, the age of distrust, right? This is becoming an absolutely central business challenge for government. It really is. And unless we understand that as digitalists, if you like, unless we get on board with that kind of collection of things that drive the deep heart of government, we're going to struggle, I think, to be invited into their world. And that's part of my challenge about where we've been with this conversation. We keep pushing to get into their world, but I think perhaps sometimes not spending as much time and energy and almost emotional energy, empathy, to understand that's the world they live in. That is the business of government. What do we have to help them do that?